A murder mystery in the South. This young mom went missing for days. Police say she was murdered. Her body was reportedly found in a burn barrel at the home of a man now charged with her killing. Authorities believe he was trying to dispose of her body and cover up a crime. That suspect is now in custody, but the mystery isn't over. We'll dive into the several questions surrounding what happened to this woman. We're on the case presented by Law&Crime. I'm Chris Stewart. It's never easy to understand why someone would lose their life to murder, especially in the way the victim did in this story, according to police. And there are still so many questions that investigators are trying to answer. This is a picture of Paige Strickland. She was 38 years old. She grew up in South Florida and a couple years ago moved to Florence, Alabama. According to her Facebook page, she was the owner of a clothing line, Loving Lane company. She was also a real estate agent, but she also was someone in her personal life who loved to fish and ride horseback and spend time with friends. She was also a mom. All of this makes what police say took place on May 17th even more heartbreaking and hard to understand. Police say the day prior, on May 16th, Autumn checked into the Strickland Hotel. It's a boutique 4-star hotel in the heart of Florence, Alabama, not far from Huntsville, just south of the Tennessee line. Police say after check-in, Autumn went to the hotel bar. She didn't leave till around 2 o'clock in the morning. By May 18th, police in Florence had put a bolo out for this young mom because no one had seen her in days. Here's the flyer that Alabama law enforcement put out to the public. Police say she was wearing a black tank top, blue jean shorts, and flip-flops when she was last seen. Police also wrote that she, quote, may be living with a condition that may impair her judgment. It's unclear what police specifically meant by that unless they were referring to her leaving a hotel bar early in the morning. Details of that part of the story we have yet to learn. Roughly 2 days after police announced that Autumn Strickland was missing, they held a news conference.
Early this morning, May the 20th, 2025, Logan Michael Rogers, a 28-year-old Florence resident, was arrested. That arrest occurred in the 2200 block of Northwood Avenue here in Florence.
This is the man police arrested, 28-year-old Logan Rogers. Here's his mugshot. At this point, police had charged him with attempted murder. It's a terrifying twist for all the people who loved Autumn Strickland. But then police said this.
As of this time, Ms. Strickland has not been located.
On social media, those who knew Autumn still held on to hope, hoping that she would turn up after this arrest was announced. But then, only hours later, police took to the podium again.
I want to provide you an important update into the investigation of the missing person, Autumn Strickland. Earlier this afternoon, detectives discovered human remains at a residence in the 2200 block of Northwood Avenue. This is the same residence where early this morning our suspect, Logan Rogers, was taken into custody. Based on this discovery, his charges have been upgraded to murder. He's being held without bond pending an Annaeus law hearing. He is still currently in Lauderdale County Detention Center. Those remains will be sent to a forensics lab to be analyzed for proper identification.
This is the home where police say Autumn's body was found. It just looks like a rundown place, a little more than 2 miles from the hotel where she was seen leaving in the early hours of the morning. Police say they tracked down surveillance video. It started outside the Strickland Hotel where they saw Autumn leave around 2 o'clock on May 17th. Police say they then found video showing Rogers hitting Strickland with her own car. They say he then circled back and hit her again with that vehicle. This is a picture of the place where police say Rogers hit Autumn. Police say about 30 minutes later, Rogers returned to the scene but with a different vehicle, a pickup truck, to take Autumn's body away. Just hours after police made the announcement that someone had been arrested in connection to Autumn's death, they say they found what was believed to be her body. Human remains were found in a burn barrel on the property where Rogers lived. According to WAAY TV, police believe that he tried to burn the remains to get rid of them. Here's video of Rogers making his appearance in court per WAFF TV. Police have yet to say if there was any relationship between Rogers and Autumn before he allegedly killed her. AL.com says that court records show that Rogers was already awaiting trial for threatening to kill his parents. The court process will obviously play out for Rogers, who's facing very serious charges and is being held without bond. But truly, this story is about the life of a woman who was a young mom and was loved by so many people. And Autumn had been through a lot, more than many parents would be able to imagine in their lifetime. A GoFundMe shows that Autumn lost her 4-year-old son after a 2.5-month battle with cancer in 2017. That boy dying just days before his 5th birthday, according to the organizer of the GoFundMe page. After her son's death, Autumn had a daughter who now, because of an alleged killer, no longer has her mom. Joining us now is retired NYPD detective and host of the Gold Shields podcast, Tom Smith. It's always great to have you on Law and Crime. This story, it's just so incredibly sad. And I want to start with where Autumn Strickland's body was found, which police say was in a burn barrel inside this shack of a house that the suspect apparently was living in. When you are going into a home and you are looking for human remains, take us inside as an investigator. What is going through your mind as you make your way through the property?
Well, what's going through your mind is anything is possible, and you have to look everywhere, whether that's looking under furniture or actually digging up the property. Those things are always on your mind because the criminal mind works in very weird ways, and when it comes to covering stuff up and covering a body up or elements of the crime, anything is possible. So you have to go into that residence with a complete open mind and be very vigilant and take your time going over that entire property. So making sure nothing's missed, as you're going through your search.
Yeah, because I imagine there's that moment for whoever the investigator was where you go to this burn barrel. I guess for you, as you're going through, I mean, is that one of the first places you're looking if you're thinking of where someone may hide a body like apparently the suspect did in this case?
Well, you're going to do, you do kind of a grid search of the property first. You're going to just start in one area and kind of work your way either in or out, looking for that area or in some sort of, grid pattern. So you're not all over the place and just picking places at random where you want to search. You're going to do it methodically and in some sort of order. So as they're going through it, that barrel is going to be in that area at that time. And it's probably going to be one of the first places in that area they're going to look.
Let's go back to, it was about 2:00 in the morning, Friday into Saturday, where the victim, Autumn Strickland, she leaves this boutique hotel. She had been at the hotel bar. And then they see her leave on surveillance video. And at that point, they put out a missing persons alert because no one had seen her. I think sometimes for us, maybe in the media, certainly the public, we take for granted what it takes to actually find people. What is the process when they say, okay, this person's missing, you're the detective on the case. What are some of the first things you're doing to try and track this person down?
Well, the first things you're going to do is try to contact the family and see if they've had any contact with the individual you're looking for. And if that's no, then you're going to just, again, using the word methodically, go through where she was last seen and kind of expand out from there. And that's the good thing about technology today, that every place in the world and in a city or town has surveillance cameras. So you're going to start tapping into them to try to locate last known location and then work backwards as far as where did she come from, who was she with, other individuals that might be on the video that you can identify either through a license plate or anything else. But that's how you're going to start, with just trying to ID someone who knows her first and get some sort of time frame set up as far as when the last time someone saw her was and you starting your search.
Yeah, the surveillance video apparently in this case was huge because it eventually, according to police, found the moment that the suspect is in her car, and then police say he ran her over not just once but twice. What does that tell you about the type of crime this was and how it could fit into some of the legal proceedings going forward?
Oh, it's mind blowing, and it's something you don't see. The circumstances of this crime are not normal. You have carjackings that take place and there's a victim afterwards. This doesn't appear to be that. So it's going to be very interesting, again, using the videos. And this is what I would be doing. You start tracking both individuals as far back as you can on any videos to see where they cross paths and why, and what were the interactions that took place between the two of them that led to something like this. There's got to be an explanation and a starting point of him being inside that car And that's going to be vital to this investigation of where and why this interaction started.
And if you don't have video, say it was a carjacking, we don't know for sure. That's still kind of one of the big question marks in this case, is that uh, they don't know at this point, or at least divulge the information of what relationship the two had. If it was an attack, if it was something where they had some conversation beforehand, we don't know. But even if you have this video of him in the car, how do you go to the next step of kind of filling in the blanks of whether she knew this person and how he got into the car in the first place?
Well, witnesses, you're going to do a large scale, investigation as far as who was at the scene, who might have witnessed something, and a canvas of possible witnesses in and around the area. So that's where you're going to start. And again, those witnesses are going to be able to provide, hopefully, some sort of explanation of this, whether the conversation took place between the two of them or a violent interaction or an argument or something like that. There's got to be a starting point to this, like I just said, and that's where witnesses and videos and all things like that are going to come into play with this investigation, which is just a bizarre set of circumstances that led to this.
Yeah, and it really is, because they say that she was running away from the hotel at some point, and then um, he's in the car, and it's just there's just a lot of blanks trying to fill in, even though even if you're not able to fill in the blanks, Tom, can at this point you get a conviction with what we know? I mean, if there's evidence of him clearly running someone over, I mean, that would be, you would think, all you would need, along with the body being found in a burn barrel.
Yeah, but when you're building a case, you want every aspect of the case, not just what had happened. You want the motive, you want whys and wheres and all that. It just makes the prosecution's case stronger, and that's what you want in this. You don't want anything to fall through the cracks or anything missed. So you're going to really bear down on every aspect of this case that you can, from the videos from inside and outside that hotel to social media posts. Was there anything on any social media footprint that he had in and around this area? Was he known in the area to be a troublemaker? Those are all interviews that are going to take place and maybe lead to some sort of answer with this. But as far as prosecution goes, you're gonna make sure everything is covered in this, so nothing does slip through any cracks.
What stands out to you when you look at the profile of this suspect thus far?
The one thing that stood out was doing what he did and running her over, going home and then coming back and getting the body and having enough thought of an evil nature, mind you, of getting the body and then bringing her back to his residence to dispose of it. That's a clear thought of, knowing he did something wrong, knowing that a crime was committed, and now trying to cover it up by getting rid of the body. So that again is going to lead to the prosecution team coming up with a motive and him knowing exactly what he did in the event any defense attorney, throws out an insanity plea or anything like that. He clearly had a conscious thought of covering it up and disposing of the body. So they're going to have a tough time fighting that.
Yeah, AL.com said that he was also awaiting trial because he had made threats against his parents. So he's not someone who, you would get the soundbite of, I can't believe that he would ever be accused of something like this, because apparently he did have some sort of record, or criminal proceedings were underway. But in your experience, when it is someone like this who not only hit her once, according to police, it was twice, and then he goes back and he tries to hide the body, and then apparently tries to burn the body, which is just really hard to think about. Typically, what's the profile of someone who does something like this?
Just evil and a clearly mental deficiency in something in his life. And that's where, again, interviews are going to take place of his family members, of any other medical procedures he might have went through, any problems he had, his rap sheets, his past experiences and run-ins with law enforcement. And what were they? Were they all violent? So all of that is going to take place as well. But, it takes a certain level of evil to do what he did, in not just performing the act of running this poor woman over, but doing it multiple times and then coming back to get her body and then disposing it the way, allegedly he tried to do, by burning it in a barrel, which is just unthinkable to do. But that's all part of this case, and it's all going to add up to hopefully a successful prosecution.
How does, and this is a morbid question, but it's one that I'm sure prosecutors will have to answer to, how does the way he allegedly tried to dispose of the body impact evidence that you're trying to gather?
It depends on the condition of the body. How long did it burn? You know, what's left, not to be, like you said, morbid, but how
Hmm.
much of the remains are still intact that they can, get a positive ID, which I'm sure they're going to do. But all depends on how long and the condition of the body that was left in that barrel.
How long does it typically take? Because I know that police were going to have, they were fairly certain that this is Autumn Strickland, just based off all the evidence they have. But how long does it typically take to get a body to DNA to be able to confirm the identity of someone? I know that it differs from state to state and county to county, but just in your experience.
Well, it depends on how fast they can get a DNA sample to them from a family member. It wouldn't take that long because of the pressing issue that it is, and a continuous ongoing investigation that it is. So it'll probably get pushed a little bit, and especially it now being in the media. So no police department or district attorney's office wants anything lingering. So they're going to get it done as quickly as possible. But a lot of it depends on surviving family members being able to give them a DNA sample from somewhere in her home or anything like that.
When you're searching for remains like the investigators were in this case, how do you mentally prepare yourself for making, you imagine there was someone that looked in that burn barrel and alerted everybody to what they found, being able to recognize that being something that human beings typically don't go through in terms of experiencing finding a body like that, but then also staying focused on your job and recognizing that you have to gather as much evidence as you can.
Right. And it's just a mindset, not to be cold hearted, but you have a job to do. And part of that job is recovering bodies sometimes at crime scenes. And it's just part of it. And you just have to get in that mindset because of how important it is, Chris. And I say this all the time. I said it on your show numerous times. The prosecution of this case starts at that crime scene. So the gathering of evidence and the collection of any remains or anything else that has to be done all leads to getting ready for trial. And that's what these detectives or investigators did. They took their time, but you have to start preparing for a trial at that crime scene. So you have to have the mindset of just doing it correctly and doing it the right way and making sure everything is covered and evidence collection is done right and the passing on of evidence is done correctly. So nothing else down the line goes wrong.
And then on the flip side of that, there's a moment that a police officer is going to have to notify this young woman's family and tell them what happened and get specific with them about exactly how she was found. How do you go about keeping that mindset if you're the person who's in the house looking for the body and trying to stay focused on capturing evidence, but then needing to have a bedside demeanor to deliver news as difficult as the news that the family of Autumn Strickland received in this story?
It's one of the hardest things to do as a detective or a police officer is notify a family that a loved one is dead, and maybe not get into the circumstances around it. Anytime I had to deal with that, you try to stay away from the circumstances because it may be very new. So all the circumstances might not be known. So you don't want to jump to any conclusions about things. But the notification to family members is always so hard. But again, being professional, once that's done, then the questioning has to kick in of when's the last time you saw her? Has she had any problems with anybody? So then the investigation takes over from there, trying to nail down any information that may assist in the investigation.
And part of this story too, that I just going back to the report that was in the newspaper that he was awaiting trial on making some pretty violent threats against his parents, and so he was free. Leading into this trial, this is someone who made threats. I'm not sure the details of the type of threats they were, how if there was any sort of physical nature to it, but it was a domestic violence case in a lot of ways. And here he is free, and now he's accused of killing a woman who it appears at this point we don't know what their relationship was. But you look at this and just the question becomes like, how do we stop these things from happening? Because I feel like in so many of these stories, it's, oh, they had either a criminal record and they were let out, or in this case, he was facing charges. He wasn't found guilty, but clearly had some sort of violent tendencies, and now he's accused of a heinous murder.
Right. Well, welcome to the criminal justice system in 2025. And we've had these discussions on your show before about cases like this of, individuals who have been arrested for violence and violent crimes that are now walking the street, enabling them to do anything to some other victim. And it has to come to an end at some point. What the exact answers to that are, hopefully gets worked out down the line. Nor me and you are way above our pay grade to come up with that. But there's got to be an end to this because it's just continuous. You've done numerous shows on this, and I've been involved with some of them with you, Chris, that these questions and these actions always come back for another victim. And it's not going to stop until something in the criminal justice system changes to keep them in longer or monitor them longer or programs or whatever it might be. But this is happening way too often.
Yeah, it certainly is. And again, there's a lot of questions about his background, who he is. We don't know a lot about that at this point, or how he came in touch with allegedly Autumn Strickland on that night that she was killed. But it's very possible that we'll be looking back and saying what could have been done, considering that he was involved in the criminal justice system in a pending case in some ways. Tom Smith, retired NYPD detective, co-host of the Gold Shield podcast. Always great to have you on Law and Crime. Thanks for coming on.
Always a pleasure, Chris. Thank you so much.
That will do it for On the Case, presented by Law and Crime. Subscribe to us on YouTube and Spotify. I'm Chris Stewart. We'll see you next time.